How you doing, everybody? Hang on a second. Get my lighting system set up here. Um, hmm, let's see. There we go. Hi, EDVF. Hey, Rancher. Hold on a second. Ah, there we go. Okie doke. Um, uh, let me check everything here. How's the sound? Okay. Hiya, Brian, Dominic, Andrew. Hi, Michael. Oh, good. I'm glad you made it, Michael. Okay, sounds great. Okay, good. I'm glad everything's okay. Um, After our discussion this morning, I was thinking of in looking at a watch, how we say, "Oh, well, this watch is something of one value or another," or even something saying, "Hey, that's a really nice watch," but I don't think they understand what value it has. So anyway, I put on my Harry Winston. This is my Harry Winston by retrograde, and Harry Winston watches were not the kind of watches you saw people lined up around the corner waiting to get. Harry Winston, until it was bought by Swatch, was primarily known for uh, the jeweler or the jeweler of the stars. And one thing I found out about jewelers and certain luxury companies like Chaumet and Van Cleef and Arpels, Chanel, and so forth. The ones that had really good jewelry making had very good cases. That was one thing. They had great cases. Never one for movements. And then there were certain companies like Chanel who bought into both F.P. Journe and Romain Gauthier. Chaumet hired Agenor to do this extended uh, balance for them, and some other things like that. And so when I got my Harry Winston, I knew none of that. I knew none of it. I liked the idea of a by retrograde. I thought that was the main reason, and the movement. I all the movement said there was a big rotor with Harry Winston on it, and so I had to find out who the movement was. Well, the movement was Girard-Perregaux. So this was, you know, Girard-Perregaux is a decent movement. It wasn't the tip-top movement, but it's still a good movement. But what became much more interesting was the by retrograde, and I found out that was done by Agenor, and I wrote to them and received a diagram of the module that they made. And so after that experience, this was several years ago. Um, geez, a few years before I retired, as a matter of fact. And from that, I learned, okay, so the things you can look for and you can find quality in or lack of quality came down to a great extent the movement and the case. Now, another aspect to that I really haven't paid that much attention to until more recently is the dial and Guy Lochet. Guy Lochet never was too exciting for me. However, on the work that Lang and Hein had done on on their movement and the engraving, and of course that Guy Lochet is that I think another word for engraving, the engraving on the dial as opposed to engraving on the balance cock, where you usually find most of the most interesting kinds of things. And so these are things that broken down, you got the movement, you have the case, you have the dial, you have the hand. I recognized the importance of the hands once I got my Urban Jurgensen because that was the first watch I had with observatory hands. But in looking at the poem on the hour hand, that whole thing was that the hour hand itself was made from several different parts. Later on, when I started doing things with Larique, I found out that Fiedler was this another one. If something had with Fiedler, found out about the dial, who made the dial, from looking at the Philippe Dufour Simplicity 37. And so there's any one of those things begins to point to possibly other aspects of the watch. And usually, though, I start with a really good movement. That doesn't always work out. There was a this god awful German watch company in uh, uh, Munich, and they had this wonderful movement, but their designs were really terrible. So anyway, I thought I'd kick that out there and for some of the things that ideas that you had. So let's see what you got here. Um, you gotta you go out or outline and look for a particular watch or brand or find what's already available out there. Pretty much find out what's available, and the fun part I think is finding it where nobody else is looking. I very few people got excited like I did about the Chaumet Dandy. I mean, just the name itself is that just say, "Oh, that's a fop," a dandy, and but that wasn't the whole point. Here was one with the two giant Agon E's gears in it, and that was why I got it. And plus, they had a module by Agonor. But so it's the kind of thing that you can find these sort of like there's the old Cracker Jacks. You get a box of Cracker Jacks, and there's a prize at the bottom. Well, if you're smart, you'll open it at the bottom. Hey, Michael, let's see. After watching today's Phillips auction and seeing prices go through the roof, I think my perception of value has been dislocated, discombobulated by the Phillips auction. Man, I don't know what's going on with those auctions. I they're just really the some of the prices when people go crazy. Uh, the watches that I only sold one on auction and ended up getting twice as much as I paid for it. I was hoping to break even on the thing, but auctions really amazing. Hey, Apar, how you doing? I consider brand, heritage, movement, complication, case, material. I tell you this. One of the things I there's brand now and brand elsewhere. I'll put it that way. Right before there was a brand in particular, H Moser, which has become one of my favorite watch brands. Before the Malin family took it over, right before then, there was a short period where the there was actually a relative of the Moser family, who I think he was there as a figurehead, but they really wanted to redo it. But before that, they really didn't have very good stuff. The same thing with Brigade before the Chaumet brothers took it over. And so you had a period there, you had this brand, this incredible brand, but and from what talking to people, there was this one brand, I can't think of the name of it, that now is considered to be pretty junky brand, but at one time was really quite good. And so I'm always brand is more like what they have in the movies. What have you done lately? Not your greatest hit, but what has been going on. What else you got here, Michael? In all seriousness, value is the eye of the beholder. To some extent, it depends on. Uh, let's face it. If you don't know anything about watches, um, when I used to fly, we'd come back in the FPO, and there were these two watches that they sold at the FPO, and they had all of these posters. One was Tag Heuer, and the other one was not Breguet, Breitling. The other one was Breitling. Now, neither one of those are too appealing to me. They were initially though, because I didn't know anything about watches, and so this is. I think there's, on the one hand, there's sort of in the eye of the beholder, but if by that you can say as you gain knowledge, I think that'll change your eye, or you run out of money, one of the two. Hey, young Brando, how you doing, man? What's up, Eli? Uh, not for nothing, we do call it the face. I recognize a watch by its face, just as I recognize fellow human beings by their face. Okay, there you go. Then the movement. There is so much to geek out with so many components, complications, and different kinds of finishes. Yes, all of those. Uh, to me, the finishing at one time was very important because I believe the definition of high horology. It was sort of interesting because it was one thing to really, to put in, for example, if you make a movement with, well, a tourbillon, but uh, a egalite, Remontois egalite, very expensive. On the other hand, to really upgrade the movement isn't quite as as expensive. And so when you look at it that way, is that, to me, the real elegance of a movement lies in the one thing, the simplicity, for example. Here they did things. Now they do have a wonderful finish. In fact, it's almost a uh, a, a mark of to compare against other finishings. But the real element there are, to me it is anyway, the real thing about the simplicity is how you make a perfect how you make a perfect mechanical watch. The Vanta Black you mentioned last week is sharp looking watch. This is an amazing thing. It looks like, I don't know why the Vanta Black is like entering a black hole. You just go into it, just sort of that depth of the black. Okay, let's see what's going on. Hey, Andrew, when it comes to brand reputation is far more important to me than brand awareness or popularity. Yeah, comes to brand reputation is far more important than brand awareness or popularity. Uh, yeah, I suppose, Andrew, my own feelings about that is it's more of what have you done lately. Let's take a look at what you're really doing right now. Now, here's something else too, and I think this is important. Um, where you have a mass producing brand, a brand that, like what Rolex knocks out 1.5 million a year. It's a lot of watches, and they have extremely high production standards, and I think that's one of the reasons they have such a good reputation. And in looking at what they have, the thing I always go to first now is the balance wheel and balance spring, as really as sort of first. And the thing is that, did they sort of have to go and put in silicon, you know, uh, or not? And if they didn't, then I have a lot more respect for them. This is why I have such a high regard for the Parachrome hairspring. because they said, okay, well, let's see if we can use these traditional metals. If niobium cons- is is a it is a metal and not a metalloid like uh, silicon is. Tangible and objective factor account for real value. It's the non-tangible factors. Yeah, that's probably the ones that sell them. Okay, let's see what else you got here. Michael, uh, the eye of the educated collector beholder. James, Frankenstein is becoming an issue with vintage. Auction houses are scary. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of a there are different kinds of Frankensteins, I guess. I on the one hand, you have sort of what a somebody who's hot rodded a movement. They take a movement and they get some parts that weren't available and somehow put them in there and make it really something. On the other hand, if you want the what you're talking about, I think coming out of a not only an auction, coming out of any place, is that where you have something that some of the parts are missing, and so they just sort of grabbed what they could and put it in there. Before Simplicity sold for 680,000 today. Doggone it! I wish I'd known about that. I would have outbid them. That chance. The bolts are particularly the bots are active tonight. Ah, that's what those were. Thank you, Andrew. I was wondering what was going on. The real triggered mobile. Okay, my disc and toe are curling. I am so thin skinned. This is weird. Um, back to young Brando. Yeah, uh, Brando. That's exactly right. They're sitting on a name. Invicta. That's the one I was thinking about. Invicta has a very interesting history. But what's become of them is, nothing. There was another brand. They used to make it. They used to have a factory here in Connecticut, um, Ingersoll or something like that. And I thought they made. I think they were one of the first ones making Mickey Mouse watches, and they just made it over in around New Britain, I think, which is about a few miles away from where I live. But now it's owned by some company making knocking out quartz watches with them, and but they have the name Ingersoll, not the same company at all. Boy, there we go. Brand always needs to innovate and surprise. Yeah, I agree with that. There's I'm trying to think which ones do. One of my favorite watchmakers is Andrew Streller. Not only has he done some great stuff himself, but he's helped other companies, and I think that that's really worth something to remain relevant. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good point of doing new things. One company again. I don't want to. sound like a fanboy. Um, and this is, but H. Moser did something over the last few years. They really changed, and they went from watches, which are still, they still have these watches, but they were so expensive that they very few people could get their mitts on them. And now they have a number of lines. The Pioneer line, I think, is one, and another is the Heritage. They have some at different levels. So if you get an H. Moser, you can get one. I think they start around maybe, I don't know, 12,000, something like that. Now, I'm not saying that's not cheap, but I mean they don't have these. Everything is, 30 and $40,000, and I think that's a good. To me, that's a very healthy thing. The thing that Andrew Streller just came out, his new one is 20,000 as opposed to 60 or some other kind of thing. Again, these are not cheap, but on the other hand, you have FP Journe, their stuff got knocked up about $10,000, but you used to be able to get, go in and get a blue for, and again, here's another watch that a lot of people like because of the titanium case, and then the FP Journe, everything else inside of it. So yeah, there is a kind of shifting back and forth. Mhm. By the way, I saw Larique Etude number one. Ah, good, on someone's wrist at a recent event in LA. Oh, Manuel. Manuel. Yes, I know Manuel. This is one of the things, I guess he was one of the OGs, the original group. Um, okay, James. Any thoughts on Tudor watches with GMT function having issues with the date wheels malfunctioning? I didn't know about that, James. I got to tell you, when Tudor first came out with their GMT, I think it was one of their Black Bays. I thought, wow, that's got to be one of the greatest deals around. And I do like Tudor because they seem to have, there's sort of an audience. You get a very high quality sports watch for a decent price. I didn't hear about the problem they had. I'm sure somebody will better fix it. It'll be a problem. Any thought? Okay, those are my thoughts on see. This is Michael had a very interesting experience. He got a Swiss Alps, hoping to have a double hairspring in it, and they said, "Oh no, we took the double hairspring out." Well, they did. It was too blasted expensive. Um, and there was some interesting posts that Michael had about his experience. I'll put it that way. Hey, Bizzles, how you doing? Hi, Tim. Yeah, I agree, Rancher. What's worse is the ambitious the language is on their website. That's really too bad. I wish they hadn't have done that. That's why the Henry Double Hairspring is still an underappreciated gem at their secondhand price. Listen, that watch, I got mine brand new. I got a great buy on it. This was back several years ago, and I think I got it. Who did I get it from? Oh, I got it from the guy who went to jail in Switzerland. The guy who had that company, and he was selling watches. Everything had to be done. No, you had to buy it from him. You sent him a wire. I never thought twice that the guy was in trouble. So I sent him a wire, and he sent me the watch, and I was perfectly happy with it. In fact, extremely happy, and I had a great price on it, and it was new, and I've never had a problem with it ever since. But the funny thing was is that this guy had sometimes they say if a deal is too too good to be true, it is, and this is the guy who went to jail. I forgot the name of his company. Okay, Michael, you're gonna buy a Henry and swap them over. What's wrong with Henrys? I like the looks of Henrys. The Swiss Alp watches are sort of a parody of the Apple watches more than anything else. Jesus, this is weird stuff you got here. Okay, yeah, Michael, I understand. Hey, they did have. Think it was they had these companies. I think it was at the one of the shows or something recently within the last 6 months. There was a box of H. Moser's from that was owned by H. Moser, and they had one of their icon watches in there. This is the one that was supposed to have been taken out and and thrown in the river, but they still have it. That was a fun watch. Hi, Abdul. How you doing? Yeah, the parody is fun. I agree. I tell you something though, Michael. That still is a very good movement. I know it's not a double hairspring, but if you've been wearing it and winding it up, I bet you've had some uh e- very good luck with it. Hello, Jean-Luc. Anyway, well listen, oh well that's good. Michael. Yeah, it's it is what it is. Uh-oh, it's frying pan time. Look, guys, I'm gonna have to go, but thank you all for putting up with me for this afternoon. It was great hearing from you. Take care.